Johnny Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. Coming up next hour, Mike Tanier from FootballOutsiders.com. Been a good semi-regular contributor here with us on Birds 365. Always has some good stats and figures and numbers to tie into games. Looking forward to talking to Mike coming up in less than 20 minutes from now. Johnny Mac, we just had Farzin Vasugian on with us, and he gave us a Kansas City, not only insight and perspective, but also a little bit of a rooting interest prediction there at the end at 41-31. That'd be 72 points. That'd be a hell of an exciting Super Bowl. Wouldn't go over well here in Philadelphia because the Eagles are on the short end, but it'd be just from a neutral observer's perspective, that'd be a hell of a Super Bowl. A whole lot of points scored. He went to the war of the trenches, which you don't think the Chiefs can win. I don't think the Chiefs can win. I'll give you more potential. I don't even want to say realistic because I don't really believe it's going to play out this way, but a more potential narrative for the Kansas City Chiefs winning. 2 words, plus, minus. If the Chiefs come out on the heavy end of the plus minus, then I got a chance to win the game. The Eagles' worst game of the year, their ugliest loss for damn sure against the Commanders back earlier this season, was a game that they coughed the football up 4 times. So plus minus swings in any game, and it certainly goes to the team that's going to be on the plus side of it. You don't think the Eagles are looking at a sloppy game here, do you? You don't think this is a game where they can give it up a couple times and put Kansas City in an enviable field position, do you?
Well, I think they can, anybody. The tip ball you mentioned before when you're talking about Patrick Mahomes and how good he is, with the arm angles and things like that. I don't have a problem with 1 or even 2 turnovers, especially if you can mitigate it with one of your own. So say you're -1. I think you're fine in that type of situation. I think we only saw Jalen Hurts start a game and lose a game once this year. And it was the 4 turnover game against Washington. Now, one of them was at the end of the game and kind of meaningless when you're in desperation mode. But nonetheless, it was very uncharacteristic. He's done a tremendous job taking care of the football as a whole. Only 6 interceptions on the year. I don't think we're going to see a 3-4 interception game from Jalen Hurts. I mean, he takes care of the football. So I'm not overly concerned about it. Turnovers can come other ways as well. Fumbles, That's a very small path to victory. So I'd feel very comfortable saying the Eagles are going to play a relatively clean game. You can turn it over once or twice. You just can't get crazy about it. And I've seen no evidence that's going to happen when Jalen is handling the football every play.
All right. And I'm going to give you a perspective that will come up well short of that. I had Bob Vitrone Jr. on my WIP show last night, Mr. Boop Stats, and he laid one on me that I did not know, had not heard prior to Super Bowl 57. The 112 teams that have played in the previous 56 Super Bowls, even I could do that math, 56 times 2 is 112. There have been 112 teams in individual years playing in the Super Bowls. Do you know how many of them have gone through the Super Bowl, finished their postseason run, and had 0 turnovers?
So 0 turnovers during the postseason?
During the postseason.
I'm going to say it's a low number. I'm going to say it's 112. I'm going to say, let's go 10.
As low as you can go.
Wow.
No team has ever gone through the playoffs, made it to the Super Bowl, and not had a turnover. It has never happened in the 56 years of the Super Bowl. How many turnovers did the Eagles have so far in the postseason, Johnny Mac?
0, I believe. Yeah, Jalen hasn't thrown an interception. Yeah, no fumble loss. No, 0. Wow.
So they come into the game with a clean turnover record. Now, you've said it here a couple times. Said yesterday, whatever. They could survive a turnover or two as long as they get one or two of their own, and it's a balance thing. You're right. What you're saying is spot on accurate, but there's a little history to be made here, and the Eagles have done a great job. Now, they've had a lead in both games. They haven't had to put quote unquote the football at risk because they were trying to rally or come from behind. We don't know that'll happen this game either, but I also don't think they're going to get out to as big a lead as they had against either the 49ers or the Giants. But the Eagles have not had a turnover yet this postseason. So if the the Chiefs are banking on that, well, we'll get Kansas City turn the ball over. We'll get the Eagles turn the ball over. Eagles haven't turned the ball over in the postseason, and they might not do it on
No.
Sunday either.
And as I said, Jalen is just taking care of the football. So that part of it, is not going to be crazy from that standpoint. So it does surprise me that no team in that entire history has done that. Because it's not a ton of games, there's, especially when you're the number 1 seed. And there's been some dominant teams over the years. You'd think somebody would have played a clean postseason. That's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing if they could finish that. That's another feather in the cap if they could finish that off.
That's a pretty good historic mark, which they have at least the possibility of getting. All right, Johnny. We got an hour, 55 minutes left to go. I don't know that I've really ticked Eagle fans off yet today, so I'm going to risk doing that here. And again, I respond to the calls I get on WIP, the guys who stream in with us here on Birds 365 and my Twitter feed. And it seems to me like there are some Eagle fans that are almost lost this week. They don't know how to handle themselves because the Eagles are the favorite. The Eagles are supposed to win this game.
They so badly want to be the underdog.
They live to be the underdog here in Philadelphia. I think that was one of the things that made this Phillies run this past year so much fun, because they were the last team in the National League to qualify for the playoffs. They were the 6th seed out of the 6 NL teams that made it. So not only were they winning, but they were winning games they weren't supposed to win, so you could throw your chest out as an underdog. That's not the case here. I gave it to you yesterday that the Madden simulation not only went the Eagles' way, 31-17, winning by 2 touchdowns. Now, the Madden simulation hasn't had a great track record. It's been wrong the last 2 Super Bowls, as a matter of fact. And oh, by the way, took the Patriots 5 years ago to beat the Eagles. So I don't know that you want to put too much faith in the Madden simulation. But you know who else is picking the Eagles this week? Siri, Google Assistant.
Oh, now you're going to piss people off.
Yeah, sorry about that. If you go just talking to your computer in your house, you're going to get the answer you want if you believe that your computer knows what it's talking about. But if you don't, if you want to be that underdog person, you go, we are bigger and better than the rest of the world. And we're Philadelphia. No one likes us. Yeah, everybody likes you. The Eagles are, you can't play the disrespect card. You got to reaching to play the disrespect card. The Eagles are the favorite. They're the favorite in Vegas, and they're the favorite of a lot of people who are already getting on the record and predicting this game. They're supposed to win this game, Johnny Mac, much to the chagrin of Eagle Nation.
Yeah, it's amusing to me. I wrote about this on Monday at Billy Boyce. It's I don't understand. Embrace it. You got the best team. Embrace it. But you're right. And by the way, it's not, no one likes us. We don't care. It's, that translated in Philadelphia, and that's no one likes us and we obsessively care. That's what that really means. But with this particular team, yeah, I mean, they compartmentalize it down to Julian Love saying, the coach, anybody could coach this team, not understanding the backhanded compliment of they're so good,
right?
Anybody could coach this team from a talent perspective, which isn't true. by the way. Nick Sirianni has done a tremendous job. And, I heard the same thing. I brought it up before. I used to hear the same thing when I covered the NBA with Bill Jackson. Yeah. I mean, was Larry Brown a better X's and O's coach than Bill Jackson? Hell yeah. Larry Brown's the smartest basketball mind I've ever come across. But guess what? He couldn't manage personalities like Bill Jackson. There's different ways to look at coaches and things like that. But the personnel of this team, Jody, and we talked Aaron Rodgers. I'll say it again. Aaron Rodgers said this is the best offensive line he's seen in 20 years. I don't have that kind of cachet, but I went back longer than that, about 40 years. This is the best offensive line I've seen. The defensive line, the sack numbers, the secondary, the savviness I always talk about with Slay and Bradbury and Maddox, the receivers. Back in the preseason, I said this was the most talented tandem the Eagles have ever had. Now, whether it ends up being the best, ends up being better than Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin, that has to do with longevity. But I think people now understand, oh, yeah, this is the most talented tandem they've ever had at the wide receiver position. The tight end is phenomenal. Up and down the field. All-star team. Miles Sanders said it. It turned out to be true. They are the better football team. I talked about my riser theory. Look at the difference. Look at the difference. They are the more talented team. I said to Nick Sirianni, Jason Kelce started his clothing line. One day, Nick, he wears, he tries to support people. He wore the underdog shirt. I said, why are you wearing that? You're never the underdog. You're literally never the underdog. And he joked, always the underdog. They're not. They were literally favored in every game this season.
Correct.
Except for one, Christmas Eve in Dallas. The third of 3 consecutive road games, and they didn't have the starting quarterback. And we all know Dallas gets that bump a little bit, which, America's team, that's part of the reason Philadelphia has this complex. They do get a little bit of a bump. But the Eagles they've been favorites all year, all the way through to the Super Bowl, where they are again favorites. They are not the underdog. I'm sorry. Jody, you're correct.
And I think the way that they should be looked at is in games that Jalen Hurts was starting quarterback this year, they were favored every single time. That Dallas game was the only time they weren't. And you're right, that was a Gardner Minshew game. That wasn't a Jalen Hurts game.
Nope.
Jalen Hurts is favorite every single time he's taken the field, and will be the favorite this week against the Kansas City Chiefs. So if the Eagles, behind closed doors, can somehow manufacture in their own minds that they are in some way, shape, or form, really love to know how you do that, the underdog in this game, more power to them. If they think it works, and Sirianni told you we're always the underdog, and he can somehow make them believe that, more power to him. Go for it, coach. But we'll step back into the real world here and go, you haven't been an underdog once all year, and you're not an underdog in this game. You're a front runner. And usually front runner has a very negative connotation. No, I want it to be a positive here. You have the better roster. Both teams were 14-3. They scored the exact same amount of points. I get all of that. But you've been the dominant team in the postseason. You've run through your first 2 opponents. Kansas City had a fight and claw to get to the Super Bowl. You did not. Rightfully the favorite. Wear it with pride. Tell the world, we're in a good place right now. We think that we're exactly where we need to be. We don't have to overachieve. We don't have to rise above. If we play our game, we think we're going to win. And that's what I'd like to hear from some of the Eagles this week.
And I think you asked me last week on the show. Nick looked really calm, really self-assured last week going into the Super Bowl. And he asked me why. And I said, well, he knows he's got the better team. He knows it better than anybody. But you're right about use what you can use. If it works for you, use it, as an individual. Nick Sirianni's been, I joked about, he's asked the same question. I was the one who asked it first about the meeting with Andy Reid. Barzine just talked about it. Andy Reid came in a situation where the Chiefs were 2-14. 2-14. And oh, by the way, he already had David Culley, who was not only his receivers coach, his longtime receivers coach, but he was also his assistant head coach. Obviously, he wasn't going to keep Nick Sirianni, who had been coaching for 4 years, 2 of them as a quality control coach, and was on a 2-14 staff. Obviously, he was going to bring in David Culley. Nick knew it. Everybody knew it. And people made a big deal. Oh, Andy Reid fired you. Who keeps somebody from a 2-14 staff over their longtime consigliere? Nobody. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. But Nick said, when he went back, he got a job in San Diego. And when he went back to Kansas City the next year, and remember, Andy turned that team around right away.
Yep.
They were 9-0 at one point, turned them around right away. San Diego upset the Chiefs, and he got jacked up about it, because he wanted to prove. But that's Nick, man. Nick is competitive. But he knew. He wasn't upset at Andy Reid. But you use what you use. I have no problem with that. But this underdog nonsense, it's time to stop it, Philadelphia. You got the best team. Embrace it. Stop it.
They do going into this game this week. All right. We're hoping to hear from Mike Tanner coming up in 5 minutes from now. I do want to run one thing back by you before we get Mike, because you're a pretty good football historian, and I agree wholeheartedly with you. How many years we have to go back? At least 30. To find an offensive line as good as this one. That Cowboy offensive line in the early 90s was the best I had ever seen then, and I would still say since. Although this Eagles line, if they can get Jason Kelce to come back and stick around and do one more year and have the same dominance again next year, they could pull even and or maybe even surpass the Cowboys. But I want to tap into your historic knowledge here for a second. What NFL quarterback, 56 Super Bowls played, what NFL quarterback, one of those 112 teams that played, one guy rushed for more yards at the quarterback position in the Super Bowl than any other? You want to take a guess?
Wow. I'd have to think about that one. No, give it to me. I don't want to embarrass
You don't want to
myself.
go. There's a method to my madness. That would be Steve McNair in the 1999 Super Bowl that the Titans came up one yard short in.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a McNair run. It was a McNair pass where Jones got tackled at the 1 yard line and just came up short. He holds the Super Bowl record for rushing in the Super Bowl at 64 yards. At number 3, it's so shocking to me. At number 3, the 490 quarterback, God, I'm zotzing out on his name now.
Colin Kaepernick,
who got blackballed, is number 2.
Colin Kaepernick. Yeah.
Colin Kaepernick is number 2 at 62. Another
that would have been my guess.
Would have been your guess. You would have gotten number 2 then. Very good. At number 3 is another 49er quarterback.
Steve Young.
No.
Wow. Joe Montana?
Joe Montana.
Wow.
59 yards on 5 carries against Miami, against Dan Marino. He has got the third most. You could have gotten through 112 teams and maybe not coming around to Joe Montana. I think that's another record that can be set.
Oh yeah.
I think
I talk about it all the time. When we went back to
yards.
Yeah, all those old tropes are dying when it comes to the NFL. You hear it all the time. I still hear it. Oh, running quarterback can't win the Super Bowl. First of all, the goalposts are going to change, right? If Jalen Hurts wins the Super Bowl, people are going to say, well, he improved so much as a passer. So it depends on your definition to begin with. But yeah, whether it's Jalen Hurts or somebody else down the road, Colin Kaepernick, if he won, running quarterback, I mean, dual threat, mobile, whatever you want to call it, the entire league is headed in this direction. So you better keep enjoying that for the people that want to go down that road, because that's going to get blown up very quickly.
And I personally think that, and I think the number is like 50.5 yards. You want a Super Bowl prop that you should be thinking about. I think that he's going to be a major part of the offense, Jalen Hurts, with his legs on Sunday. So rushing yards for the Eagles quarterback may be able to become the Super Bowl
Another
all-time
one.
leader.
So maybe we'll have the all-time Super Bowl leader and the first team to never turn it over through a postseason run.
A couple of things to keep your eye on Sunday. Yeah, first thing first, Eagles more points on the scoreboard than the Chiefs, but there are a bunch of other things that are up for grabs too, including being the gold standard of the National Football League. I'm going to beat that one to death until the game on Sunday, I can guarantee you. All right, coming up next, we're going to have our bud, Mike Tanier from Football Outsiders, giving a national perspective of this. And I haven't talked, I exchanged texts just to book him to come on the show, but I haven't asked him anything about the game. Are you going to get ticked off at him too when he picks the Eagles to win? Because you got to be an underdog going into the big game. God forbid people think the Eagles are going to win. We got some snotty responses on Farzine picking the Chiefs. There you go. You got your underdog spot already today. We had a Kansas City guy on to pick the other side. We got Mike Tanier's insight for the upcoming big game. He joins us next.